I'm Tom Baker, this is Chasing Cars, and this episode is all about the Toyota BZ4X, the electric SUV behind me. This vehicle is about to get its second upgrade since launch. So it originally came out, it got a software update which improved the range and the charging speed, and it's about to get another big tech change before it arrives in Australia in February 2024. In this episode, we're going to do a few cool things. We're going to check out the updated 2024 BZ4X first of all, and I'll take you through the changes for 2024. We'll check out any styling and interior differences as well. We're actually going to take the BZ4X off-road on a gnarlier track than I think anybody would ever take their BZ4X on, and then I'll let you know what we can expect when this SUV lands in Australia to take on the likes of the Tesla Model Y. But before we get started, hit subscribe below. Chasing Cars, honest reviews of your next car. Brought to you by The interior of the BZ4X is a bit like a RAV4 that's become fully electrified, and under the skin, that's a little bit what the BZ4X is like. It rides on an adapted version of Toyota's E-TNGA combustion vehicle platform. It's not sort of a straight petrol car platform, but it is more like a RAV4 than some other SUVs are like their petrol counterparts. Anyway, the interior is, I think, relatively appealing because it incorporates a number of nice materials like this textile on the dash and seats that are vinyl, but importantly they're cooled, so that definitely makes them livable, particularly if you go for this stone color, which is really lovely. The infotainment system is bright, crisp and clear, and you do have dedicated climate controls, though they are touch sensitive. Storage is on the whole good, wireless charging, a couple of cup holders, an area beneath this position here, and also decent sized door bins. But the view forward is really quite different, and it will be quite unfamiliar if you're coming from another Toyota product. We've got this very interesting steering wheel assembly here, looking way forward at a small digital driver display, and then again further out over the bonnet. So as far as Toyotas go, this one does feel like a bit of a spaceship, but quality on the whole feels very decent. In the back, the BZ4X is pretty comparable to a Tesla Model Y, both in terms of space and comfort levels. Behind my driving position, I've got immense legroom. Headroom's good, although this car doesn't have a sunroof. Tow room is really quite tight. The major issue back here is that the seat base is very low, so in order to have any leg support, you're gonna have to splay your legs super wide. Some other EVs get this more right. The Hyundai Ioniq 5 is one example of a SUV that's a little bit more supportive for rear seat passengers. You do get air vents and USB-C ports though, and quality soft touch materials extend all the way to the back, marking this out as a slightly more premium product than something like a RAV4, and we know it's definitely going to be more expensive than that car. So this is something a little bit different, driving the new BZ4X off-road. Honestly, probably not somewhere that most people who end up buying a BZ4X or leasing a BZ4X in Australia are going to bring their cars, but I mean, it's always nice to know what's possible. So we are at a purpose-built off-roading course here in Japan, which is primarily used by like a Land Cruiser club over here. BZ4X, probably not the most common vehicle used on this course, but honestly, we haven't really shied away from attacking some of the more difficult bits. The really hardcore stuff has been off the agenda, but we've got like a 20-degree downhill descent. We've got a steep ascent. We've been tackling some fairly tight corners with hidden bog holes and stuff. And honestly, I've been a little surprised at the capability of this all-wheel drive version of the BZ4X. And we've got traction control switched on, that's just the parking sensors going off. We've got the traction control switched on, so the only technology that we're using here is X mode. And if you have a Subaru Forester or Outback or Crosstrek, you'll probably know X mode. It's Subaru's all-wheel drive control technology, and it's been co-opted here for the BZ4X because of course this car is a joint venture with Subaru. They're going to have the Solterra, and the Toyota also picks up X mode, and just like on those Subarus, it's actually quite incredible how precise the control you get with X mode is, and you can do some far more difficult ascents with this system than you might with a conventional drive system. Is it as good as a Land Cruiser or a Fortuner or a Hilux? Of course not. You can just ignore my Japanese friend in the infotainment telling me I'm too close to the wall. Now this is a monocoque vehicle. It's certainly not body on frame. It's much more like a conventional SUV than any of Toyota's serious off-roaders, but we found that on this course here, there's been sufficient wheel movement vertically. We actually haven't gotten stuck. We have lifted the inside wheel a few times, and there are some occasional moments where you go uphill and the traction control and the X mode do need a couple of seconds to figure things out and send a bit more torque rearwards. I was pretty skeptical because the rear motor on the BZ4X is pretty modest. The front motor is the dominant one. So if your front axle is a bit stuck, you've got spinning front wheels, it does take a couple of seconds to send drive to the back. And it's not the biggest shove because we do have a pretty small motor back there. But again, it's been effective. We've accomplished the climbs on this course without an issue. There's a bit of mud, nothing too serious, but I would say that this is definitely more difficult and more challenging than I would ever take this car on if I owned it. So hopefully that gives you a bit of an idea of the level of difficulty involved. Got an interesting part of the course now. We've got some small loose stones and rocks, turning around a broad uphill corner, loads of bumps and undulations in the track. And you know what? The BZ4X all-wheel drive just kind of keeps on keeping on. It doesn't really bother it in any way. Progress is pretty calm, pretty easy. We're only interrupted by the noise of the parking sensor warning and the occasional scrabble as the control units work out where to send torque. So here we're actually a little bit stuck here, just keeping my throttle steady, and the car just figured it out and we're on our way. In terms of on-road driving dynamics, well, we haven't done it with the BZ4X yet. I have driven this car at Toyota's test track in Melbourne. I found its dynamics to be very pleasant, but we're yet to hit anything like a bump on a public road. So on-road commentary, probably gonna have to wait until the BZ4X launches in Australia in February 2024, but I'm hoping to be able to drive the car a little bit on-road tomorrow. So if that's possible, I'll slot that in here. 24 hours ago, I drove the 2023 Toyota BZ4X at a pretty cool off-road park here in Japan. Now I'm driving this, the 2024 Toyota BZ4X. Now, if you're a bit of a train spotter, you might have already picked up on the fact that the side charging port badge says BEV rather than electric, but that is pretty much the only aesthetic difference between the 2024 car and the 2023 model that we drove yesterday. But there are a couple of important technical changes that you can't see that relate to thermal management and efficiency in this vehicle. I'm going to let you know what they are in this video, and I'll also let you know what you should expect from the Australian BZ4X when it lands in February 2024. So it might look almost identical inside. In fact, it does look identical inside, but I am now driving the 2024 BZ4X. So this is the BZ4X that we are getting in Australia. At long last, we can now see our local spec and exactly what it will be like. So aesthetically, very little in terms of change here. The electric badge on the side has been replaced by a BEV badge, so we really are talking about slim pickings here. It's actually the mechanicals which have changed on the car, and the changes are almost entirely designed to hit out at criticism from cold climate markets about the BZ4X. We've seen this car perform pretty badly on some super cold range and charging tests completed by Europeans and Americans who live where it gets very cold. In most parts of Australia, we don't operate in super low temperatures, so a lot of the changes are less relevant for us, but there has been an alteration to the air conditioning system, which has improved efficiency by maybe about 5%, perhaps between 5 and 10%. We're still waiting for WLTP range and efficiency ratings for this car, but when they arrive, I think they're going to be going up by a small percentage. The main change is much faster charging speed in cold weather, but in 25-degree weather, the sort of average that we might see in Sydney or Melbourne, the charging speed has not changed at all. There's a new thermal management system for the battery, but again, that's cold weather stuff. So largely my remarks from Victoria a few months ago when I drove this car remain exactly the same. The handling feels light and pleasant, the ride feels supple and sort of well balanced, and the amount of power is strong in the all-wheel drive versions, but it certainly won't snap you back into the seat like a Tesla Model Y will. It all feels very, very familiar and very approachable indeed. So we've now had our clearest view yet of what form the Toyota BZ4X will take when it lands in Australia early next year. In this video, I've shared with you the mechanical changes for the 2024 model of this vehicle, including software alterations to make it more efficient, have longer range, and also offer better charging performance. But for Australia, that will only really impact you if you live in like the very southern part of Tasmania, for instance. For the rest of us, many of the specs carry over from the 2023 version of this car. My view on the BZ4X, I think it's not a bad looking vehicle. I like the interior, and its driving dynamics feel comfortable, pleasant, and familiar, which is exactly what Toyota probably wants out of this car, a vehicle that will convert some RAV4 hybrid owners into electric vehicle owners for the first time. Anyway, that's my view on the 2024 BZ4X. Let me know your opinions down below in the comments. While you're there, hit subscribe and the notification bell. If this video has been useful, feel free to share it with someone who might like this car. And as always, thank you for watching Chasing Cars.